Oh my. This is something my grandfather gave me earlier this summer. It's an RCA model CC413 VHS camcorder, manufactured June of 1994. This is a full-size shoulder mount camcorder, the classic camcorder. My grandfather purchased this new in 1994. He used it only a few times between 1994 and about 1997, and the last time it was ever used was in around 2002 or 2003. He brought it out just to test it, and he recorded video of me reading a children's storybook. And I assume that footage is now lost. It was done just to test the camcorder. But this did record footage of me when I was a baby. And when I last saw this camcorder, when I was 7 or 8 years old, the last time he brought it out, I thought, oh man, this was my introduction to camcorders. I'm pretty sure this was the first camcorder I had ever seen, and it was the last camcorder I had seen before I got my own camcorder, my first camcorder. And I remember seeing this and thought, oh man, I want this so bad. Because I knew he didn't use it, but I never had the heart to ask him for it. Well, fast forward almost 15 years, and now it's mine. He didn't want it anymore, that's for sure. It hadn't been used in such a long time. So I'm really glad to have this now. So it was only used a few times, ever. So you won't be too surprised to hear that this thing works absolutely perfect, and as you can see, it's in beautiful shape. It doesn't have a scratch on it. It's physically perfect. He kept really good care of this. Of course, it's hard to ding something up when you only bring it out a few times ever in its life. So yes, this is a full-size VHS camcorder. It takes standard VHS cassettes. And there weren't too many companies that ever made full-size VHS camcorders. There was RCA, there was Hitachi. However, the Hitachi camcorders I found are identical to RCA's, so I would say probably the Hitachi camcorders were manufactured by RCA, or possibly the other way around. I know Hitachi made a lot of RCA's VHS VCRs, so probably what's more likely is that Hitachi made this camcorder and RCA's other camcorders. But I know Hitachi sold them. And Sharp sold them, the Sharp Slim Cam series. And I know Panasonic made them, the Omni-Movie series. And probably store brands like Sears and probably Montgomery Ward and those guys probably sold them as well, made by one of the actual manufacturers, RCA or Sharp or Panasonic. But these full-size RCA VHS camcorders were extremely popular, by far among some of the best-selling camcorders of the 80s and 90s. And as a matter of fact, these sold well enough that RCA saw reason to manufacture these full-size VHS camcorders until 2001. That's right, in 2001 you could buy a camcorder just like this at a time when Hi8 and Digital 8 and Mini DV were well established in the market, and vhs-c and Super vhs-c were still very popular as well. But you could still buy these as late as 2001, these RCA camcorders. And what's kind of nice is, if you go to the Wayback Machine and you go to RCA's website from 2001, you'll see that right up until the very end, they manufactured, I believe before they quit making them altogether, in 2001 they still made 3 different models of these, and they were all very nice. It's not like Sony, who, when they discontinue a product line, they make the last models of that product line really crappy and basic and lacking a lot of functionality. RCA never did that. Their last ever VHS camcorders were still very nice. The top end model you could buy in 2001 had a color viewfinder, and it had a number of quite nice features. And get this, several of RCA's final VHS camcorders in the late 90s and early 2000s, they actually had an LCD monitor, just like any modern camcorder. Right around here, they had an LCD monitor that could be flipped out, which I think is super cool. I really want to get one of those. I've looked on eBay. There are tons of these on eBay, of course, because they sold so well. And another thing is, all these RCA VHS camcorders were just really well built, even the cheap models. This was a bottom-of-the-line model in 1994. But all of RCA's camcorders, they were just built really well. They're quite reliable. From what I've read, it's very common to pick them up, perfect working. They just really don't break due to age or otherwise. They're very reliable and durable and stand the test of time quite well. So I'd really like to get one of those final VHS camcorders someday, because eBay's flooded with them for quite good prices. And I've seen that for $20 or $30, I can get a tested working one, not tested with a tape in it, because nobody has VHS tapes anymore, but at the very least powered on, tested. One of those last camcorders that has the flip-out LCD monitor and the color viewfinder. I think that'd be really cool to have. Just, you know, a piece of history, one of the last ever VHS camcorders. But for now, today, I'm very happy to get to show you guys this model. So as I said, this was a bottom-of-the-line model in 1994. This has practically no features on it. Really, the only kind of extraneous feature this has is it lets you put titles on the recorded video. And this has really nothing else. No manual anything, no manual white balance, no manual focus, no manual exposure. It's all automatic. And the buttons you see right here, that's all the buttons. So let's take a look here. Well, under this cover, you have AV output. Very good. This does record just mono sound. I'm not sure if RCA ever made any that recorded stereo. It's possible that their earlier models did. Back in the early days, up until the early 90s, RCA made some pretty high-end models of these that had quite cool features. They had quite advanced editing functionality and audio dubbing and video dubbing. And, you know, almost prosumer level camcorders RCA made. But after the early 90s, they catered to the bottom end of the market, because after the early 90s, VHS wasn't a desired video format for camcorders anymore. People had moved on to Video 8 and High 8 and vhs-c. But there was still a VHS camcorder market, mostly for people who didn't aspire to, you know, learn any advanced features or do any fancy stuff with a camcorder. They just wanted something to record, you know, family events and stuff like that. Just something really basic and easy to use. And of course, those same people wanted something that would be easy to watch back their recordings. So the best solution there is, of course, VHS. You just take the tape out of the camcorder, pop it in your VCR, and you're good to go. So RCA recognized this, and they decided to cater. After the early 90s, they catered solely to the bottom end of the market. And they did very well, because their camcorders were cheap, easy to use, and still very well built, very reliable. So what else do we have here? This does have a 12x zoom, power zoom. Later camcorders of this type actually had digital zoom, which is kind of neat. The viewfinder, it's a black and white CRT viewfinder. And when you're not using the camcorder, you can fold it away just like that, and it makes the camcorder very slim, easy to pack away. There's a diopter for the viewfinder right there, and this little door, it doesn't open up completely. You have to bend it back. It just bends. It's a solid piece of plastic. And see if you can see in there. There's a little mirror right there. So how this actually works is the CRT is actually oriented like this, pointing this way, and that mirror bounces the image that way. And this little door allows you to clean the mirror. There's brightness and focus adjustments for the CRT. I took a couple of minutes to actually play with those a bit. I thought the CRT was a little bright and a little out of focus, so I fiddled with those a bit, and I think I made it a bit better. So what do we have for controls up here? Well, here's your power switch. Very simple. You got a camera mode and a VCR mode. These are your VCR controls: stop, eject, play, fast forward, and rewind. Your recording functions right here. You can stick titles on top of your recordings. Pretty much the only fancy feature this camcorder has. And very nice, since, you know, a lot of higher end camcorders of this time and before didn't have this feature. You can stick the date and time on the video. You can reset the tape counter. Turn off the display indicators if you want. And this button, just a standard review function you find on a lot of camcorders. When you're in the recording mode, you press this, and it rewinds the tape a few seconds, plays that few seconds back, and then puts it back to where it was, so you can see what you last recorded. That just reminds me of another really nice feature this camcorder has. It has a complete review function in the camera mode. So when you're in the recording mode, the camera mode, you can use the tape transport controls to play, rewind, or fast forward the tape while you're in the recording mode, so you can fully go through the tape and see what's been recorded. And that's really nice. You don't have to switch to the VCR mode. This is a rubber handle. This is pretty much the only thing that's deteriorated on this camcorder. You can see if I lift it up here, it's very cracked. Unavoidable 22-year-old rubber. It's kind of funny. The handle was completely fine before the first time I ever picked it up after getting this camcorder, because nobody had picked this thing up in 15 years. So the handle had remained fine. And then when I got this thing earlier in the summer, when I picked it up for the first time in like 15 years, that's when all the rubber cracked and all broken. It's still intact, but I try not to use this handle now because it could snap at any time. So too bad, but that's the way it goes with rubber. No matter. Looking around the other side, got a little window there so you can see when the tape's running. Your power zoom controls, and your record start stop button. That looks like, oh, that's for a shoulder strap to go, and here's the other end here. I have the original shoulder strap right there. Took it off because I don't use shoulder straps. And right there's your lens, and it's got a lens cap. And there's your lens. And it is threaded, so you can stick adapters on it. This right here, this plastic hood, unscrews, and you can screw an adapter in its place, or screw a lens or whatever. And it's kind of funny when you read the manual for this camcorder. It specifically instructs you not to unscrew this like I'm holding it right here with a finger and a thumb. It tells you to take the entire palm of your hand and hold it up against the adapter and then rotate your whole hand, which I don't quite get that because that's quite uncomfortable and a lot harder to do. So I just grab it and it screws off, and you can screw a lens in its place. And I do believe, yeah, that looks like the same size lens that my Handycams use and my Sony Mavica cameras. So I'll screw that back on. Lens cap goes right back on. Oh, and if you look here, there's your microphone. Higher end models, in place of this RCA logo, had a video light. And finally, when you look on the back, here's your battery. These take an odd type of battery. It's a 10 volt lead acid battery, which I wasn't expecting. I would have expected a 9.6 volt NiCad battery. So I find that very odd. This thing came with two batteries, the original one that it would have been purchased with, and in 1996 my grandfather purchased another battery for it. So this is the original battery that it shipped with, and if I take it off here, press this tab down and lift the battery up, take a look at this. This is really funny. My grandfather at some point wrote on this battery, he stuck a VHS cassette label on it and wrote on it, "Junk, throw away, no good, this battery has had it." Yet he kept it. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. He writes all this stuff on it and then didn't throw away the battery. You can see there, PB, that's the chemical symbol for lead. Sealed lead acid battery. Made in Japan. Oh yeah, this whole camcorder was made in Japan. Very nice. So probably was made by Hitachi. Hitachi was a Japanese company. RCA was an American company. RCA as a company ceased to exist around, I forget when, but it was the mid or late 1980s, and that's when they were bought by Thomson Consumer, or no, they weren't bought by Thomson Consumer Electronics, they were bought by General Electric. And then later General Electric sold RCA, as well as GE's own licensing rights for consumer electronics, to Thomson Consumer Electronics. And I believe to this day, to this day, the RCA name still exists. Obviously, you've probably walked into Walmart or wherever and seen RCA Electronics. You generally see the RCA name on really cheap, crappy Chinese stuff now. So there's some information right here. Yeah, oh yeah, right there, Thomson Consumer Electronics. There's the serial number. How to attach the battery. Recycle the battery. So yes, it's a 10-volt lead-acid battery, which I find very odd, but get this. The battery, the 9.6 volt NiCad batteries for my JVC GRC7 camcorders fit on here just fine. They are just different enough that you can't slide them on normally, but you can force them on. It doesn't take too much force, not nearly enough to break anything, but they will go on and they do work. How funny is that? The only catch is, aside from the fact you have to force them on, they hold just fine, but you can push the battery upwards without having to press the latch or anything. So if you're using the camcorder and you accidentally bump the battery upwards, it disconnects. But yeah, inside this battery is, this is just a case, but inside it is a 10-volt lead-acid battery. I cut the second battery open to see what was inside, and here's what was inside the second battery. No name on it or information whatsoever. It's just a 10-volt lead-acid battery with the wires there. I cut it open because obviously both of these batteries absolutely dead. I tried putting as much as 64 volts into them to get them to start taking a charge. They drew absolutely no current. So I cut one of them open just to see what was inside. I was here. I don't have Mom's Dremel here, so I couldn't use the Dremel. So I used a knife and I destroyed the battery. I destroyed the case, cutting it open, so that's in the garbage now. So I just wanted to show you this. I won't bother trying to restore this. I'm just going to throw it away. I don't have any use for it. As for this other battery, I will save it and keep it until I get home, and I'll Dremel it open, and I'll probably convert this to use lithium-ion cells like I did with one of my JVC batteries. And that should work quite well. And you can see right there, there's the input for the power supply. If you want to run this on AC power. You've probably seen glimpses of all this stuff in the background and wondering what this is. Well, this came with all the original equipment. My grandfather kept everything. First of all, the original manual, CC413. And take a look at this. This is pretty cool. My grandfather took this thing into the United States on July 18th, 1996. And so he had Revenue Canada, Customs, and Excise. And although I'm not sure, I would guess that this is the organization now simply called Canada Border Services. Identification of articles. So this stamp here says Deer Island, so I would assume my grandfather brought this into Eastport, Maine, via the ferry from Deer Island, New Brunswick to Eastport, Maine. And so he just had it declared here so they wouldn't try and charge him duty for it, because he already owned it. He didn't buy it in the United States. Right there it says article, camcorder, RCA. There's the serial number. Total number of articles 1. July 18th, 1996. So I thought that was cool to find that. It's pretty neat. And on the back here, here's what looks like a road map that my grandfather drew at some point. Or perhaps it was a drawing of a doghouse. Oh boy. So this was a Canadian market unit. You have numbers for English and French customer service. Copyright 1994. Printed in Japan. Very nice. And take a look at this. This is cool. The original product registration card. Ensure your warranty confirmation, owner verification, and model registration. Grampy never filled this out. Return within 10 days. That's about 21 years and 355 days too late, or thereabouts. He tore a part off, probably to draw something else. Urgent, process immediately, in an obviously fake rubber stamp marking. What's inside? Protect your investment. Congratulations on choosing an RCA consumer electronics product. It's an intelligent decision that's sure to reward you with many years to come. So there's that. I thought that was kind of cool. That this still exists. What else do we have? Got some stuff behind the bag here. I'll get to the bag. Here's the power supply, original power supply. It is, well, it was made in Japan. Oh, there we go, Thompson Consumer Electronics. There's the model number. 120 volts, 50 or 60 hertz. Output adapter mode, 9.6 volts, 1.7 amps. And it does have a slot to stick a battery on to charge it. And it charges at constant voltage, 12.5 volts, 1.6 amps. Charge only battery types, these types. Danger of explosion if other batteries are used. Yeah, if I were to stick one of my NiCad JVC batteries on this, first of all, it might or might not actually fit, but if I put it on and it fit, there would be big problems, because where it's charging at a constant voltage, it would potentially shove, the battery would potentially draw tons of current, and it would break the power supply and possibly damage the battery. And here's the bag. I'm not sure if this is the original bag. It doesn't have any logos on it, and this green stripe here leads me to believe that it's probably not a bag that came with it. But it fits it just perfectly. It's a very nice bag. It was obviously specifically meant for a VHS camcorder, but it was possibly designed specifically for a camcorder of this type, because it fits just perfectly snug in there. And this pocket holds a battery perfectly snug. And it's got a place here. I've got some composite video cables there, and the power supply fits there, and a cassette sleeve there. And I also brought a cleaning cassette with me just in case I had to use it. I did run it through this once. It was already working just fine, but I ran it through once just for the heck of it. And a pocket right there, and there's side pockets as well. So that's everything. So let's actually turn the camcorder on. So obviously we can't use those batteries. I could use the power supply, but I think this is an excellent opportunity to demonstrate my homemade lithium-ion camcorder battery that you saw me make in a previous video. This works on this camcorder, works awesome. Twice the capacity, half the weight, very easy to charge. Oh, it's wonderful. As a matter of fact, I could potentially charge this battery using the power supply. Because let's see, if the power supply outputs 12.6 volts, divide that by 3, that's 4.2 volts per cell, which is perfect. So I'm never going to try it, you know, just to be safe, but I think if I wanted to, I could probably charge this lithium-ion battery on that charger, if the battery actually fit on it. Once again, this is a JVC vhs-c camcorder battery, so it's possible it wouldn't fit on anyway. But it does fit and work on this camcorder. I have to stick a little bit of tin foil on the contacts there, because it's just different enough that the contacts don't like to touch. And another piece of tin foil right there. So I'll stick this battery on and then I'll come back.